Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, thank you for being here. One of the business people in my district had a line of credit, pretty significant, and they came to him and said, we have to cut you in half, so at the end of this year, we need you to be at this point. And he had businesses going fine, things are going well, just out of, they said out of prudence on their side. Now, what he had in his plans was continued expansion, continued growth. He spent the following year laying people off, selling off pieces in order to get to that point. And, you know, I've talked to him a number of times, and he said, I've lost faith in everything you're trying to do because of the fact that I have a good business that's working well, and instead of, you say you want to create jobs, and instead of creating jobs, what we've done is force him to lay people off, or I shouldn't say what we have done, but what has happened because of the credit line reduction. And so how do we restore the faith of that business person? What do you say to him, Mr. Chairman?
Well, in terms of the specific case, it'd be important to know more. It could just be that the bank disagreed with his assessment.
No, I understand that, but I mean, this is a common complaint to the small business community.
And again, I think in part it's because banks have tightened their standards, and part of that was appropriate because some of this lending before the crisis was not well managed. And of course, the general weakness of the economy and decline in collateral values and so on makes some borrowers who were previously good risks no longer such good risks, and that's why banks have become tighter in their lending. That being said, as I've emphasized today, it's very important that if a borrower is truly creditworthy, that they get access to credit. And the best thing I can do, and the Federal Reserve can do, is make sure that our examiners, and I would make sure to be clear that the Federal Reserve examiners are only one of a number of different agencies that do look at banks, but make sure that our examiners are taking an appropriately balanced position, which is on the one hand, we want banks to be prudent and make good loans, but on the other hand, excessive conservatism restriction is not constructive. So if the customer's bank is telling him that or her that examiners, or particularly Federal Reserve examiners, are the problem, we would like to hear about that, either from the borrower or the bank itself could be in touch with the Federal Reserve through local district or in the board.
Because what we want to do is obviously, I know how hard the efforts are being made to get this squared away, and we want to impart that to the business community, to this fella, that hey, your faith that you should have is justified, that we are working on this, that the examiners are getting squared away. And I know you've put them almost, for want of a better way to put it, examiner boot camp as to what you're looking for, what you're not looking for. How do you expect that to work out over the next year?
Well, we've gone beyond the point of issuing guidance and doing training to trying to get feedback and evaluation. So, for example, we have done baseline studies of several hundred banks in terms of how they deal with troubled commercial real estate properties. And we looked at how they acted and what their procedures were prior to the guidance we put out. Now we can go back and survey them subsequent to our guidance and our training and see if there's been a change in their behavior. If there hasn't, then we want to understand why. So we're doing our best now to get feedback. That's really all we can do, is get feedback, try to adjust, and see how that works. But again, we have an ombudsman at the Board of Governors, and every Reserve Bank has got people who are there to talk to banks or borrowers, and I hope that they'll get back in touch with us.
And where do you expect us to be 6 months from now in terms of small business lending? If one of our small businesses was sitting here saying, Mr. Chairman, what am I going to be looking at 6 months from now?
I think there's hopeful signs. We survey banks about their standards, and they have stopped tightening standards for small businesses, and we're beginning to see some little bit of improvement. So I think we're turning around. I think it's going to be better. It's still tight, but it's not getting worse at least, and that's the first step towards improvement.